Off. So if you want to uh, put any question, you'll find that there is a Q and A at the bottom. Please use that, open that, and you'll get a question and answer box. Any questions that you want to put through? Type it into the box, and we can give you either oral answers or sometimes maybe written answer also in the box itself. Right. And then there is a chat function. Chat function, well, is less focused. So my advice is I don't use the chat much. Use the question and answer. Some people are saying in the chat that they are unable to hear. Now, if they are unable to hear, that must be a local problem because in general, most of the other students are able to hear whatever we are saying. Now, see, science and technology has wide range of areas, in every exam. Whether you are appearing in state services like, say, Bihar Public Service Commission or UPSC or UP, PSC, etc., you'll find a lot of areas are covered as part of science and technology. Now, one of the very important areas is nuclear technology, all right? And then there, of course, just indicate to you how we'll be going on. There are renewable energy technologies have also become very important recently, where you deal with renewable sources of energy, solar energy, wind energy, etc. Space technology, the technology associated with satellites, with launching of satellites, applications, space missions, sending spacecraft to Moon or Mars. That's also important. Then there are certain materials related technologies where you're dealing with properties of materials, new materials that have been developed for different purposes, not the ancient elements and compounds that you study for basic science. So these are new materials. For example, nanomaterials would be one very important aspect. Now, biotechnology related areas are also important, and related areas of medicine. Now, even otherwise, the application of science and technology to agriculture is important for GS. But nowadays, thanks to the farmers' movements, agitation, and the types of disturbances that took place on 26 January yesterday, this is becoming even more important. So that's another area that you should have some familiarity with science and technology in agriculture. And some overall ideas of the role of science and technology in the modern world, and India specifically, obviously focused on India particularly. So these will be the types of things that we will be coming across. Now, let us now start with the area of nuclear technology. Nuclear technologies became important after the Second World War. 1945 was the most important year. That was the year when America exploded nuclear bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. Notice the first important use of nuclear technology was in the field of warfare. In fact, this is also something that we'll be looking at. Defense-related technologies will also be part of our subject matter subsequently. So nuclear technology application started with weapons, but subsequently energy-related applications also developed. However, even today, to understand that even in the present situation, 2021, for example, nuclear energy and nuclear weapons are closely linked together. Take one important international situation, Iran. There's been a lot of controversy over Iran, and you get questions on that in current affairs also. Controversy over Iran's nuclear program. Iran claims that its nuclear program is meant for energy purposes, while America, Israel, and many other countries said that the nuclear program of Iran was for the purpose of developing nuclear weapons. That led to a variety of controversies, sanctions against Iran, nuclear agreement, and even today that continues to be a very important issue. So this nuclear technology, the key point here is the overlap between weapons and energy. Similar technology is used for both. This keeps on creating problems that we'll point out. But let's start now to look first at the basic science of nuclear technology. We are not going to spend much time on this, but you should have a basic idea. What is nuclear energy to start with? Nuclear energy is associated with nuclear fission at the moment. Fission means splitting a nucleus. So fission involves taking a large nucleus and in some way breaking it up into smaller parts. Now, along with the smaller parts, some energy is also produced. That's why this is a source of energy. Now the slide shows you a nucleus of uranium. Some people are raising a question whether they have to note this down. You see, this is a lecture. In a lecture, you take lecture notes. That's up to you. You decide what you don't know, what you know, and take notes accordingly. So obviously, all these topics are part of nuclear technology. If you don't know about it, better make a note. Otherwise, if you know it, well and good. Now, nuclear energy from uranium. Look at the uranium nucleus. This is what is written as 23592. 235 is the mass number, 92 is the atomic number of uranium. This is the uranium nucleus. Now the way it is split is you bombard it with neutrons. So a neutron comes and hits this. Now neutron does not break the nucleus. Neutron gets absorbed into the nucleus. It becomes part of that nucleus and makes it unstable. So what happens now is that it becomes unstable. Unstable means liable to break up. And then you will find the nucleus now splits. This is what you can see at the right-hand side. Two smaller nuclei come out. These are krypton and barium. It doesn't matter what these are. Focus just on the uranium part. That is the key here. So smaller nuclei, because of the splitting, energy is produced. And along with energy, some more neutrons are also produced. See, these neutrons are very important. Without these neutrons, we would not be able to use this as a practical source of energy. So to recapitulate, uranium nucleus bombarded by neutrons. It absorbs a neutron and becomes unstable, breaks up into smaller nuclei, emits energy, and also releases more neutrons. Now, this leads to the idea of a nuclear chain reaction. What's a nuclear chain reaction? One uranium nucleus has been split. Those yellow pictures indicate smaller nuclei that have been produced by splitting the uranium nucleus. Then also note that these orange images, these are the neutrons that are released. Neutrons that are released by the splitting of the original nucleus. These neutrons go and bombard more uranium nuclei and split them. So this is the concept of a chain reaction. Understand why it's a chain? By splitting one nucleus, you produce neutrons which go and split more nuclei, then more neutrons are produced, they will split even more nuclei, and this process can continue indefinitely. And each time energy will be released. This is the source of nuclear energy. Recapitulate once again. Uranium nuclei are being split by bombarding them with neutrons. Each time they split, more neutrons are produced. These neutrons will go and split other nuclei, and this process can continue as long as you have uranium nuclei available, as long as some other conditions are satisfied. One of the conditions which is important here, try to understand. See, when a uranium nucleus splits, it produces several neutrons, as you can see in the slide. These neutrons have lot of energy, they are moving very fast. But to split a uranium nucleus, you need a slow neutron, which is technically called thermal neutron. The technical term is thermal neutron. So the ones that are produced are fast neutrons moving rapidly. The ones that will actually go and split the nucleus, uranium nucleus, should be slow neutrons, thermal neutrons. Now you might wonder why slow neutrons. Normally fast things should be more capable of splitting anything. Now here it should be clear to you if you understand a bit of the science here, because the splitting here is not taking place through impact but through absorption. The slow neutron will get absorbed into the uranium nucleus. If it is slow, then there are greater chances of it being captured by the uranium nucleus. That's why you have to slow it down. This slowing down process is done by using a substance called a moderator. So moderator here is slowing down the neutrons that are released so that they can continue to participate in chain reaction. Chain reaction will continue. Now, in a nuclear bomb, you have exactly the same process taking place, but it is an uncontrolled chain reaction, completely uncontrolled. Whereas in nuclear energy case, this is a controlled process. You don't want an explosion taking place. The process will be carefully controlled so that the process does not cause explosive accident. In the nuclear bomb, you want explosion to take place, to destroy everything. So this is the key difference. But you can hopefully understand it's the same process whether you have a nuclear bomb or whether you have nuclear energy. The basic process is the same. Now, this is a typical visualization of a nuclear bomb exploding. Nuclear bomb is, of course, the most destructive weapon known in the world. And it is extremely dangerous, if you like. India has also developed nuclear weapons. But then you must remember that our neighbors, Pakistan and China, have also developed nuclear weapons. Of course, there are many other countries in the world which have also got nuclear weapons. Now, 2 points I'll add on the basis of issues raised by different people. One is
Uranium is used.
why uranium is used. Well, uranium was the
First substance discovered,
the first element which could undergo nuclear fission. And even today, it is the only naturally occurring element which can directly undergo nuclear fission. The only naturally occurring element. Others do not occur naturally. We'll mention some of those. That's why uranium is used. We don't use other things. In a nuclear reactor, the question is, how is the reaction controlled? Well, obviously the reaction is controlled by ensuring that the reaction does not go very fast. There are components in a nuclear reactor called control rods. Those control rods will slow down or speed up the reaction as required. In a nuclear bomb, there are no control rods. There's no need to have any control. So this is the nuclear control aspect as well as the nuclear weapon aspect. Now, we are now focusing on nuclear reactors. Now, we are not discussing nuclear bombs at this stage. We pointed that out because it's connected. That's a different topic, defense technology. So any questions that you have on nuclear weapons, leave that till defense technology. Some people do have questions, that thing. Now, nuclear reactors, which are used for generating nuclear energy, are classified in different ways. As far as we are concerned, what are the most important classifications? If you look at the slide, one is on the basis of neutron energy. Some types of nuclear reactors, the traditional reactors, the ones that we are currently using, are thermal reactors. They use slow neutrons. But some that are being developed and that we'll talk about later today are called fast reactors. Now, fast does not mean that the reactor is working very fast. It means that it is using fast neutrons. The neutrons are not slowed down. In India, for example, one of the most important technological projects currently is called the prototype fast breeder reactor. You'll see this later, so don't worry about it immediately. Prototype fast breeder reactor. That's an example of a fast reactor. Another classification is on the basis of fuel used. Some reactors would use natural uranium as a fuel. India mainly has such reactors which use natural uranium as a fuel. Again, we'll comment briefly on the technology later. But if you look at worldwide situation, worldwide means entire world, then you'll find that most of the reactors are enriched uranium. India, there are very few enriched uranium reactors. Enriched uranium, the percentage of U-235 is increased. As compared to natural uranium. Because uranium has different isotopes, uranium-235, uranium-238, etc. Another classification is on the basis of moderator. And lastly, on the basis of the coolant. These are not particularly important for us. So don't worry about them too much. Just note here that most of India's reactors are heavy water moderated. They use heavy water as moderator. Heavy water is D2O, ordinary water H2O, deuterium oxide. Deuterium is a heavier isotope of hydrogen. Now, on the basis of coolant also you can classify reactors. Most reactors are water-cooled reactors. The heat energy that is produced is carried away by water. But the new reactors that India is developing are liquid metal cooled. This is something that again we'll look at further. Using liquid metal for cooling purposes. In particular, sodium, liquid sodium is a metal. So this is how you classify reactors of different types. Most important classification is the first and second. Third and fourth, just one or two points are relevant. Now, moving on. This is a sketch. Notice that it is not a detailed type of design, but a sketch of the important type of reactors that India is currently using. Most of Indian reactors are heavy water moderated and cooled reactors. As you can see, there are control rods separately. The heavy water is acting as the moderator. The control rods are made of metals. And then there are other components also, pressure tubes, because you have to maintain high pressure on the heavy water. Fuel elements, those are the uranium rods that would be used, and so on. Ultimately, you will also produce steam. Why will you produce steam? Because you're going to use this reactor for the purpose of generating electricity. And electricity would be generated by using steam, just like you do in a coal-based power plant. So India's nuclear reactors are of this design, the ones that have been built in India till now. Now, there are other types of nuclear reactors also. This, for example, is the diagram of a VVER nuclear power reactor. There's a reason for giving this here. India has bought VVER reactors from Russia. These are developed in Russia. And that's why you'll find Russian names also, if you are looking at the picture, the English caption and there's a Russian caption. These are developed in Russia. India has bought these from Russia. These are not built in India. Main differences are that these reactors use enriched uranium, not natural uranium. And they use ordinary water, not heavy water, as the moderator. Russia has supplied the reactors. They also supply the enriched uranium fuel to India. So this model of reactors is also used in India. But remember, not made in India, bought from Russia. Now, look at a list that was brought out in 2019. Countries which use reactors, operational reactors. And United States led the way, followed by France, China, Russia, South Korea. India was pretty far behind. China uses many more reactors, while other countries use even less reactors. Even countries which are technologically more advanced as compared to India. For example, Japan. And there are reasons for this. I'll comment on some of the reasons later. Now, India in particular has a wide variety of nuclear reactors worldwide. I just draw your attention to a couple of these. You don't have to be familiar with every part of this map. Look at the bottom, Kudankulam. In Tamil Nadu. This has 1000 megawatt reactors. Some are operational, some are being built. Total number will be 6. These are the VVER reactors obtained from Russia. So the location of the VVER reactors is Kudankulam on the coast of Tamil Nadu. The rest of the country you will find domestically produced reactors. Some of the other places, you have proposals to build reactors. They have not actually been built. You look at these, for example, 6x1000, Kovada, Haripur, Mithi Virdi in Maharashtra. These are proposals. Currently, they are not, in fact, they are not even under construction, just proposed. And these would also be bought from abroad. If the proposals are finalized, they will be bought from abroad. But the ones that are actually operating, it's basically Kudankulam, and where India has an agreement with Russia to buy a few more plants. Others of this type of capacity, 220 megawatts, 700 megawatts, etc., these are Indian-made nuclear power reactors. There's a proposal to have a nuclear power station in Gorakhpur in Uttar Pradesh also. But this is again a proposal at the moment. So a large number of reactors throughout the country. If you look at the Indian nuclear program overall, this is one of the most important things that you should be familiar with. India, long time ago, 70 years ago in fact, prepared a 3-stage nuclear program. This was under the leadership of Dr. Homi Bhabha, who was, in a way, the founder of India's nuclear program. This three-stage nuclear program, the first stage was called PHWR stage, pressurized heavy water reactors. These, as we have already explained, let me just remind you what is the main technology here. Pressurized heavy water reactors use heavy water as moderator and natural uranium as fuel. The basic technology for these pressurized heavy water reactors came from Canada. And the technology developed in Canada is called the CANDU design, CANDU. Canadian Natural Uranium. So Canada collaborated with India, provided this basic technology, and this was adapted by India. Adapted means modified according to our conditions. And this has been developed further. Now, why did India adopt this approach? This first phase. There are various reasons. One is that India had very limited uranium reserves. Now, limited uranium reserves meant that setting up nuclear enrichment plant would not be very useful. Secondly, if you are using natural uranium as a fuel in the CANDU design, there is scope for using the waste materials that are produced in the future, which we'll explain in a moment. So this is more efficient from the viewpoint of using uranium resources. Countries which are abundant in uranium and which can buy uranium easily from other parts of the world, for them this type of technology is not very useful. For them the light water reactor technology is more useful. But for countries which have very limited uranium, like India, this is considered more useful. So India's first stage was planned as pressurized heavy water reactor stage. India also had some light water reactors, but these light water reactors, keep in mind, India had bought some BWRs from America. This is almost 55 years ago, 1960s. Small boiling water reactors bought from America. And VVRs that we have talked about are bought from Russia. The VVRs have already been constructed. This diagram is old. More VVRs are now being set up. So this is the idea of the first stage of India's nuclear program. The second stage aimed at developing fast breeder reactors. This technology we'll talk about in some detail in a short while. But the basic idea of fast breeder reactors is, one, they use plutonium as the active fuel. Plutonium does not occur in nature. So this is how you get your answer to the question of why you are using uranium, because uranium is naturally occurring. Plutonium does not occur in nature. Plutonium is obtained by reprocessing spent fuel from this first stage reactors. So this is produced inside nuclear reactors. Then you separate it and use it in these new type of reactors, fast breeder reactors. India first built a fast breeder test reactor. This was very small, 40 megawatts only. And this is only for testing purposes. This is not basically for power generation. Testing the technology. So this is meant for testing the technology. Now India is constructing a 500 megawatt fast breeder reactor. We'll see the status later. And this has much higher power potential. If we can develop these types of reactors, then we would be able to produce more than 500,000 megawatts of electricity using these. But you'll find that this has a lot of difficulties. So it's easy to say that we can produce huge amounts, but in reality, practice, it's extremely difficult. India has the third stage also planned. Third stage is called the thorium-based reactors. As is well known, India has massive thorium reserves, particularly in Kerala. Monazite sands of Kerala have a lot of thorium. The problem is thorium cannot be split. Thorium nucleus cannot undergo nuclear fission. So in that sense, it's not a nuclear fuel. It is possible to convert thorium nucleus into some other types of nuclei, uranium, for example, and then use that for nuclear fission. But that again is a very complex process. And we'll see that the success of this, the third stage, depends on the success of the second stage. So once we are able to develop the second stage nuclear reactors, then we can go on to use that technology, materials for the third stage. This would be long-term stage, because if you have huge amount of thorium, you could use this for hundreds of years. But this would be a unique type of situation. No other country in the world has developed technology of this type. This is not being used anywhere in the world. This would be globally unique. And again, it might sound good that it will be unique, India will be the most advanced country, but then you must also remember that the technical problems are extremely serious. It's very difficult. That must also be kept in mind. So this is a very long-term stage. We are very far from this stage. Currently, we are trying to develop the second stage. Third stage, we are carrying out some experiments. For example, a 300 megawatt AHWR, advanced heavy water reactor, which will use some thorium is being designed. It is not being constructed, it's being designed. This is what is referred to as India's three-stage nuclear program. And you should be able to explain the logic behind this also. First stage, technology which is relatively well developed and easily available. Second stage, very advanced technology, not generally available. Third stage, extremely advanced technology, not developed anywhere in the world till now. So first stage is the practical stage, the second stage is what we are currently developing, and third stage is what we are planning and hoping in the future. Now, having understood the three-stage nuclear power program, now turn to what's actually been done. And let's look at this in one more way, just to understand how these stages are related to each other. So PHWR, the existing stage, FBTR, advanced heavy water reactor for the future. And just look at the key flows that I'm explaining here. PHWR, we are using natural uranium that we get from, say, the Jadu Goda mines in Jharkhand, Singhbhum district, Jharkhand, which was the rear part of Bihar mine. That is used in this uranium fueled PHWRs. The spent fuel was spent fuel. The fuel that has already been used, it has produced electricity. So you can think of it as waste materials. That spent fuel is reprocessed and that produces plutonium. So look at PU in the bottom of the slide. This produces, the spent fuel is used to produce plutonium. So at this stage, we are producing power and we are also building plutonium stocks for stage 2 through the spent fuel. This is the biggest advantage of using PHWR. You are getting substantial amount of plutonium also. And just in passing, please note that India has used plutonium also in its nuclear weapons. The nuclear devices that India has tested, 1974, 1998, were based on plutonium. So now you can also understand the importance of plutonium in India's defense. Now in the second phase, we'll be using plutonium for these so-called fast reactors. That technology we'll comment on further. This will produce electricity. It will also produce something called U-233. So we build up stocks of uranium-233. And this uranium-233 can in future be used in the third stage nuclear reactors combined with thorium. So notice that in the third stage you will have the uranium-233 coming from the second stage, combined with thorium obtained naturally. That will become the basis for the third stage. So these stages are logically linked. In the long term, we'll be using thorium. And thorium is abundant in India. Absolutely abundant. Uranium, on the other hand, is very limited. Very limited. So, to be clear, why in the long term we would like to go for thorium. Now, it's now clear the three stages and what they involve. And remember that you should focus just on the key points that I mentioned. Don't go by the very complex diagram. This is only for the purpose of viewing it. You're noting things, note the key points that I'm explaining to you. That's why I'm slowing down a bit also, for those who want to note any of these things. I repeated that in several different ways just to make it absolutely clear to everybody. This again is a slightly different diagram, but showing the same points. PHWR, natural uranium, plutonium obtained from the spent fuel, and also depleted uranium, using this in fast breeder reactors to get electricity, but also putting some thorium inside this to get uranium-233, using that along with thorium in the third stage reactors. This is what we are hoping to do. What we are actually doing, remember, is the first stage at the moment. The second stage is under development. The third stage is just a plan for the future. We are trying to build designs, etc. at the moment. Now, how is nuclear power sector organized in India? Should have some understanding of the organization also before we come to the fast breeder reactor technology, and then the issues like what are the advantages, disadvantages. Some people are interested in that. We'll of course be discussing it. In India, atomic energy overall is under the Atomic Energy Commission of India. This is the highest body, the Atomic Energy Commission. And this looks at both the civilian and the military aspects of nuclear energy. Therefore, it includes, among others, the National Security Advisor. He is also a member of the Atomic Energy Commission, the Cabinet Secretary of the Government of India, the Foreign Secretary. They are all members of the Atomic Energy Commission. The chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission is also the secretary of the Department of Atomic Energy of the Government of India. So whoever is the chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission, he is a technocrat. So remember, that will be a technocrat, that won't be an IS officer. Now, this is the highest level of Department of Atomic Energy is always under the Prime Minister himself. This has been true from the period of Jawaharlal Nehru, and it is true till the period of Mr. Modi also. The Department of Atomic Energy, given its strategic importance for nuclear weapons, India's defense, I guess that should be under the direct control of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is the minister in charge of the Department of Atomic Energy. Of course, the actual work would be done by the Atomic Energy Commission. Prime Minister will not be a nuclear expert. Now, what about nuclear energy? Let's turn to the energy part. Here there are two public sector companies. NPCIL, Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited, and Bhavini, BHAVINI, the Bharatiya Navikiya Vidyut Nigam Limited. These two bodies, these two companies actually, are involved with nuclear energy, nuclear power generation in India. Now, what are their areas of work? And remember that they are both public sector companies. The existing reactors in India, the 22 reactors that are now operational as of this year, with a total capacity of 6,780 megawatts. 9 reactors are under construction. And for other reactors, India has given administrative approval. The existing reactors are all operated by the Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited, NPCIL. NPCIL is the company in charge of all uranium-based reactors in India. Whether they are natural uranium or enriched uranium. So whether you have Indian-made reactors, pressurized heavy water reactors, or the Russian reactors, BVER. And maybe in future, India will buy reactors from France, from America. These are proposals. Those will also be uranium fueled. So they will also be under NPCIL. So NPCIL is the organization which produces nuclear power in India currently. Bhavini has a role in the second stage part. Look at that in a moment. But now there's another important point to note here, because this has international ramifications. This technology, it's not just a question of India's role, it's global issues also arise. You have heard of the Indo-US nuclear deal. This was entered into when Dr. Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister of India. As part of this nuclear deal, India was subjected to IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency safeguards. This is the United Nations agency, IAEA. It carries out inspections of nuclear installations. So after the Indo-US nuclear deal, IAEA safeguards and inspections were applied to India also, but with one limitation. NPCIL facilities will be subject to IAEA's inspection. And what does NPCIL run? Uranium-based plants. Plutonium-based plants would not come under IAEA safeguards. Why? Yes, note that also. Because plutonium is used by India for its nuclear weapons. Of course, plutonium is also proposed to be used for nuclear energy, but currently we are using it for our nuclear weapons. The nuclear tests that we carried out, nuclear bombs that India has, are all based on plutonium. So this was kept outside the purview of IAEA safeguards. And that is why a separate company was set up by the government, Bhavini, for running plutonium-based energy reactors. This is a basic distinction, and this is connected with Indo-US nuclear deal and the developments that took place after that. Now, the period of Mr. Modi as Prime Minister, 10 reactors, 700 megawatt pressurized heavy water reactors made in India, and 2 units of LWRs to be set up in association with Russia. Others from France and USA and Japan have not been finalized. There is a memorandum of understanding, MOU, but it's not been converted into a final contract. So these the government has allowed. Now, last year, 2020, there was some important progress. I'd like to comment on that also. In July 2020, in fact, it was the 22nd July 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic period, the Kakra Power Atomic Power Plant Unit 3, this is called CAP 3, KAPP 3. This is India's first 700 megawatt PHWR with new innovative features. this became critical. Now, what is critical? It's a technical term in nuclear energy. Critical does not mean being in the ICU. This is not medical criticality. They became critical. But before we talk about critical, let's make this point here. This is Indian designed first 700 megawatt plant. Before this, Indian designed plants were of lower capacity. 220 megawatts, 500 megawatts, 540 megawatts. The highest capacity was 540 before this, Indian designed. And these were not very efficient, the earlier designs. This is the Indian designed 700 megawatt PHWR. Higher efficiency, of course, higher capacity also. That's why this is a significant achievement. The Indian design working well. Now, critical term is often used in nuclear reactors. Let's understand this term. A nuclear reactor is said to attain criticality when every nuclear fission event releases a sufficient number of neutrons to sustain a self-sustaining chain reaction. That means it will continue after that. We don't have to intervene or interfere. Then it is said to become critical. So critical essentially means it now has a self-sustaining chain reaction. All you will need to do is to put in the fuel. When the fuel is getting exhausted, and you continue with chain reaction. You keep on producing energy. This is what was achieved. And notice this is the first stage of this design. There is a body called the Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, which conducts safety reviews of nuclear plants. So AERB, this conducted safety reviews of this new CAP 3 and granted permission in July 2020. After that, it was made critical. The permission, in fact, was given on the 17th of July last year. So we have a system for looking at the safety aspect of these nuclear power plants also. The Atomic Energy Regulatory Board. This is what the Prime Minister had said at that time. I just quoted a statement from the Prime Minister. You see, that's not because we are sort of campaigning for the Prime Minister, but essentially the importance of this achievement. Congratulations to our nuclear scientists for achieving criticality of Kakra Atomic Power Plant 3. This indigenously designed 700 megawatt reactor is a shining example of Make in India. The Prime Minister linked this with Make in India. Indian built advanced nuclear power plant design. You can also link it, if you like, with Atmanirbhar Bharat, but Make in India particularly. This is what the Prime Minister had said that time. Now this Kakra power is in Gujarat, and they already, the older designed plants, the 220 megawatt plants, there are 2 of them in operation. And another CAP 4 is being constructed, which will be again the 700 megawatt design. So this is the latest development. And this is PHWR using natural uranium. But nevertheless, advanced technology. Now, Now turn to Bhavini. We talked about Bhavini earlier. Bhavini has become very important term. What is Bhavini? It's a government company, public sector, under the administrative control of Department of Atomic Energy. And this was set up when India was having discussions with America on the nuclear deal. Because, see, as part of the discussions, it became clear that India would have to accept IAEA safeguards and inspections. So India decided that we should bifurcate our nuclear plants. And Bhavini was set up. So remember, it was set up before the nuclear deal, while the negotiations were going on at that time. And what is the idea behind Bhavini? Its original objective was to construct and commission the first 500 megawatt fast breeder reactor at Kalpakkam in Tamil Nadu. This is the original goal. On the basis of this, in future, more fast breeder reactors will be constructed, commissioned, operated, and maintained by Bhavini for the purpose of generating electricity. So this will continue in the future. This is the concept of Bhavini. Now, a bit about the technology and the progress achievements. See, this 500 megawatt prototype fast breeder reactor. Prototype means that it will be a design basis for future reactors, but it will be actually producing electricity. It will not be just for testing purpose. It will be actually producing electricity, but it will also help in developing the design for this type of reactor. So this is located at Kalpakkam. This is quite close to Chennai. It will be the forerunner for future fast breeder reactors. In future, they won't be called PFBR. PFBR is the name given to the first reactor of this type. Once we get good experience of PFBR, then we'll build other reactors, just calling them fast breeder reactors. These will help to promote India's energy security. I noticed that there is a IGCAR also located at Kalpakkam. This is developed the technology and the design, the Indira Gandhi Center for Atomic Research. So this is the experimental facility. Experiments are conducted, technology is developed, designs are planned. The fast breeder test reactor had been also tested at this IGCAR, that original test reactor. The data of the test reactor is being used in the PFBR. But test reactor had very small capacity, 40 megawatts. This is 500 megawatts of electricity. Now what is it doing? See, the general idea of, now look at the technological part. Fast breeder reactors. The basic idea of fast breeder reactors is they in general produce more fissile material than they consume. Fissile means material that can undergo nuclear fission. So you can say in a way that they are producing more fuel than they use. But the technical term is fissile material. Need to understand how that happens and why that is important. This PFBR design is using a mixed oxide of plutonium-239 and uranium-238. So mixed oxide, you'll sometimes find that abbreviated as MOX, mixed oxide. And what mixed of what? Plutonium-239, this is obtained from the reprocessed spent fuel of the earlier PHWRs. And uranium-238, which is also left over from the earlier PHWRs. Uranium-238 is not used in the PHWR. It is part of the waste material. So you combine the plutonium-239 that has been obtained from the fuel and the waste material uranium-238. React that with oxygen, make it a mixed oxide, and then use that in the PFBR. Now PFBR will produce heat by nuclear fission, but let's note the key point here. No moderator is required because plutonium fission takes place with fast neutrons. Plutonium fission does not require thermal neutrons, slow neutrons. It takes place with fast moving neutrons. So there is no moderator. That's a key characteristic here. However, there is liquid sodium used in this reactor. This is not a moderator. This is a coolant. It will carry away the heat produced by the nuclear reaction. And there are pumps which will pump that liquid sodium around the reactor. Sodium metal in a liquefied form. Now notice another key feature here. Along with producing energy, it will be producing energy. At the same time, this type of reactor will also be able to convert that uranium-238 into more plutonium-239. So it will convert U-238 into Pu-239, thus get you more fuel. So you notice you are not getting the fuel from nowhere. It is not that you are conducting some magic. If I put it in Hindi for a change, कोई जादू नहीं हो रहा है. You get something from nothing. What is happening here is nuclear reaction. The uranium-238, which was useless in the first generation reactors, that is because that does not undergo fission. That gets converted by nuclear reaction to plutonium-239. And plutonium-239 is a nuclear fuel for fast breeder reactors. So in the fuel mix also you have uranium-238. And you'll notice that there's a term used here, blanket of depleted uranium. You put a blanket of depleted uranium, which will also, depleted means where you don't have U-235, only U-238. And use that to get more plutonium. This plutonium will then be processed further and used for the future commercial fast breeder reactors. So after this technology becomes well developed, then India will construct many fast breeder reactors, commercial, operated by Bhavini, and then generate more and more electricity. In future, scientists are also proposing to use thorium-232 as a blanket. Blanket means surrounding the reactor core. Thorium-232 is obtained from nature. Kerala mines, monazite sands. And what will happen to this thorium-232? It will get converted into uranium-233. This will be separated and then used as the fuel for third stage, when we come to the third stage of India's nuclear program. Third stage nuclear programs will be using uranium-233 and thorium-232. Notice that will be the third stage, not the second stage. So this is how the second stage fast breeder reactors will work. And it should also be clear to you why this is extremely important. It is extremely important for various reasons. Let's note some of the reasons. Number one, this is very advanced technology being developed indigenously by India. Indigenously, made in India technology. Made in India reactor. Number two, it has the potential of producing huge amount of energy using the spent fuel and the waste materials from the first stage. Thirdly, this will help in India developing a stock of uranium-233, which can then be used in future stage, the third stage of the nuclear program, based on thorium. So all this is part of the importance of the prototype fast breeder reactor that we will be discussing. Now, the fast breeder reactor project started in 1970s. With the initial design and construction of the FBTR. And the model for this was the French reactor called Rhapsody. France had a reactor called, test reactor called Rhapsody, the French term, so don't worry about the language here. Indian scientists made this FBTR and used this for learning about and testing the complex technologies that are involved here. And that experience is now being used in the PFBR, particularly the use of liquid sodium as coolant to transfer heat from the reactor core to the steam generator. This is one of the key technologies involved here. And it is extremely important. This is the basis of PFBR. The location of PFBR near Chennai, as I explained to you. It's in the coastal region, close to Chennai. And this is a photograph of the reactor center at Kalpakkam. It's being constructed. Now, obviously photographs and maps are just for viewing. Now let's turn to what are the problems and issues and what is the status here. Now here let me make some points. This PFBR has been repeatedly delayed. You can say it's delayed now by more than a decade. At one time, the government was saying that it will be ready by around 2010. Now notice that we are now in 2021. And at the end of last year, in fact, monsoon session of parliament that took place last year, there was no winter session of parliament. In the monsoon session, the government had told parliament that the PFBR is now expected to be commissioned by October 2022. It has got delayed further. In 2019, for example, it was claimed that it will be operational by 2020. Then, last year, and the government said that it will now be ready by 2022. Now, even that, some people are very doubtful about. Doubtful. They feel that it might be delayed further. Obviously, we can't say that it will be delayed further. Maybe it will be ready by October 2022. Now notice, when it is commissioned, it will add 500 megawatts of electric power. But more important are the other aspects of the achievement that we'll talk about in a moment. Why has it been delayed so much? Technical issues. Obviously, there are a lot of technical issues and problems. And the government said, notice the government told parliament, that there have been many technical challenges as well as design inadequacies. Now don't start asking questions about what are these technical challenges. That's far beyond the scope of general studies. But most importantly, with regard to that sodium circulation, because some leakage takes place, that creates problems in the functioning. So technical challenges and design inadequacies are being encountered, and this is responsible for the delay in commissioning. CAG has given reports also criticizing some aspects of this, but their criticism is more focused on, the HRD policies followed. India has some systems or mechanisms which create problems here. I give you one example of what sort of problems arise. We have retirement age for government officials, for scientists, etc. Now you say that, all right, we should have retirement age, otherwise there won't be new vacancies coming up. The problem in these types of systems is, CAG pointed out, that many of the experienced people with good knowledge and understanding of these processes retired, and they were replaced by people who did not have that sort of experience. So there should have been some mechanism for using the knowledge and experience of the earlier scientists also. You understand the type of problems that have arisen. Other countries presumably have good systems for managing this. In India, we have a rigid type of retirement age. If you are in this category, you retire at 62, other category 62, 60, maybe 65, and so on. So variety of problems have arisen. End result is that this project is highly delayed. And these technical problems have proved to be very difficult to solve. If we are able to commission it in 2022, next year, this would be a very great achievement. It will mean that, 50 years of work is now coming to fruition because the work started in the 1970s. And stage 2 of India's 3-stage nuclear program will become operational. That will undoubtedly be a very big achievement for India. But I've already pointed out to you the fact that has been delayed frequently, and there's no guarantee that it will be ready next year also. Now, the fuels that are being used, let's comment on these fuels before we talk about a bit more about these fast breeder reactors. Pressurized heavy water reactors use natural uranium. Light water reactors are using low enriched uranium. India needs, for a 700 megawatt PHWR, about 125 tons of fuel every year. And for 1000 megawatt LWR, we need about 25 tons of fuel every year. This is largely made in India, the natural uranium fuel. Of course, India can import it also. Now we have agreements with some countries like Kazakhstan to import uranium if required. The light water reactor, the fuel is supplied at the moment by Russia. Russia has supplied the reactors, they are supplying the fuel. The PFBR is using mixed oxide fuel. We have already pointed that out. Now, I'd like to briefly point out to you that, see, this fast breeder reactor, also called fast neutron reactor. Why is it called fast neutron? Because you are not slowing down the neutrons. These types of experiments have been carried out in other parts of the world also. Here are some examples. Don't make a note of all the technical issues here, but just note that experiments have taken place in Russia, China, Japan, France, etc. Apart from India. India, the fast breeder test reactor, and now this prototype fast breeder reactor under construction. Now, most countries did not succeed in developing a commercially viable system. France, for example, closed down its experiments. Japan has also closed it down. Russia is the only country currently, and to some extent China also, on a small scale, which is currently trying to develop these types of reactors in a big way. This is the Russian design. But this is what the Russian government has said recently. Their reactors are called B-ring reactors, the experimental reactors that they have built. Using fast neutrons. They say that these have many advantages, but they are much more costly than the VVER reactors. This is the Russian design based on light water reactors. They are much more costly. Now, cost is important for commercial application. You don't want something which is very expensive. They require much more metal for construction. They require bigger reactor vessels with intermediate pumps and heat exchangers and a complicated steam generator. Russia has launched something called the BN 1200 project to try to improve the performance of these fast reactors to make them more competitive with conventional reactors. But they have not made much progress till now. Even the Russians are not thinking in terms of commercial use of these fast breeder reactors. Further, Indian technology differs from the Russian technology in various ways. Because India has adopted a technology design where we will be able to use thorium also. Russia does not have that plan. So notice the Russian technology has also encountered many difficulties. It's not competitive, not cost effective. Indian technology is even more complex, so it will be even more difficult to develop. So you should not be very surprised at the fact that this has been highly delayed. Now, we have explained and discussed nuclear energy, India's nuclear technology, stages of India's programs, the current phase, importance of fast breeder reactors. I've also pointed out to you a bit about Russia, the most important country which has also been working in this area, types of issues that are involved. Now, we'll go on to look tomorrow at some more things which are connected with this. We'll talk briefly about the thorium part, for example, very briefly, because we already mentioned several aspects today also. We'll talk also about the problems, overall problems of nuclear energy. See, why are many countries abandoning nuclear energy? So what are the advantages and disadvantages of nuclear energy? We'll talk about that. And we'll also talk about some other technologies that are now emerging and which could be important for questions in GS. Nuclear fusion and the status of the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor. That has made some progress last year. India is also part of that project. We'll talk about that also. These would be other aspects of nuclear technology, nuclear energy, internationally as well as India. And we will look at the overall situation of nuclear energy, the overall problems, why this is criticized. Some people feel that it can be very important. So there are both types of opinions. Some distinguished nuclear experts are also very critical of India's nuclear program. I'll give you some examples. Like the ex-chairman of the Atomic Energy Regulatory Board has written several articles criticizing India's nuclear program. So it is not as if it's there is a sort of uniform consensus on this. So we'll talk about some of these things, and then we'll go on to renewable energy sources. That's the other important aspect here. Now, here let me answer a few of the questions or issues that have been raised by people. Somebody has said China got success in nuclear fission. That is nonsense. You might have seen some Chinese propaganda somewhere. China or no other country has got any success in nuclear fusion so far. I'll point that out tomorrow. So don't worry, some media report, some vague article somewhere saying that China safal ho gaya. Nothing of that type has happened. All right. China is part of the ITER experiment, which we'll talk about tomorrow. China has no success on its own. Now, let's note some more questions. We are talking about moderator and coolant. Well, heavy water is used both as a moderator as well as a coolant. It can be used in both purposes. Somebody had a question regarding advantages and disadvantages of PHWR. You see, we've already pointed out those earlier today. PHWR has more efficiency as compared to light water reactors. Design is more complicated. But the main advantage is that you will be able to get more plutonium and you will be able to use the depleted uranium in future programs. So disadvantage, lower efficiency, more complexity, higher cost. Advantage, more plutonium available and using the depleted uranium in the future. Now, others, I think things like repeat something, I don't know what is to be repeated. Nuclear power plants will not have environmental issues. Some people have raised this question. We'll talk about that tomorrow. What are the environment? Because that's a question of overall advantages and disadvantages of this. Now, some people also ask whether they can get the PPT. Yes, you can get the PPT and ask them to share the link with, or you can send an email, they'll send you the link. PWR, PHWR. PWR is pressurized water reactor. PHWR is pressurized heavy water reactor. Pressurized water reactor uses enriched uranium. It is not heavy water, it's light water. Light water is ordinary H2O. And PHWR uses heavy water D2O. That's the difference. Now, well, I think that's all that we have for today. Since these areas have relatively complex technologies, we are not going to have very long classes. 1 hour 45 minutes or 1 hour 30 minutes for at least a few days. Otherwise, it's quite complex and we have lots of things, as you can understand. We even have international policies and so on involved here. Right then, thank you. And you'll get links for tomorrow, will be different links. Right, so that will be new links will become available. Should be sent to you by whoever is in charge of this. We look at other aspects of nuclear technology tomorrow, and then we'll go on to look at renewable energy sources. All these exams have similar syllabus, so the same type of areas will be covered. Right? Thank you. Ending now.